Hey everyone, Marcos Villegas here. The man right next to me is Bob Arum, and we're talking Pacquiao versus Bradley 3, April 9th at the MGM Grand. But before we touch on that, Bob, I want to say congratulations. Yesterday was your 50th year as a promoter, and time flies, right? Tell me, how'd you celebrate yesterday?
Well, I was in Toronto, a big ceremony. My first fight was Ali and Chuvalo, March 29th. It was a Tuesday night also in Toronto at the old Maple Leaf Garden. We had big ceremonies. George Chuvalo was there. Ali's daughter Rashida was there. All the brass from Toronto was there. The mayor. It was great. It was a real memorable celebration. And the fight between Ali and Chuvalo played on nationwide television all over Canada.
Looking back at it, when you were there, did you get like a flashback, a flood of memories that came to mind? Do you still remember it like it was yesterday?
Well, you got to understand, the times were tough times then. We got thrown out of the United States because of Ali's remarks. We finally landed in Montreal. We got thrown out of Montreal. And finally we landed in Toronto. And all I was thinking about that night, as I recall, when the fight happened, was thank God when I heard the bell ring.
You had a lot on the line given that night. Do you see it now and you just think like, man, I can't believe I pulled that off?
If that fight doesn't happen, believe me, I wouldn't be a boxing promoter for 50 years. I wouldn't have been around being a boxing promoter. And I think, like Jim Brown, who was my partner at the time, the great football player, said that it would have been a terrible blow to the civil rights movement because it was the establishment that banned us from the United States. And if they had been successful in preventing that fight from happening, it would have been a big blow to civil rights.
Off the top of your head, who was the most naturally gifted athlete you feel in your experience that you promoted? Was it Ali or someone else comes to mind?
Nobody was close to Ali.
Yeah.
The Ali that existed prior to halfway through '67 when he was suspended and couldn't fight anymore. That Ali in that period was the greatest fighter, pound for pound, anything that I've ever seen. He had better moves than Ray Robinson did. He moved like Willie Pep. He was the complete package. I had never, ever seen any fighter, whether heavyweight or lower weight, as good as Ali was during that period of time, from the beginning of 60 until 67.
Speaking of Ali and you having promoted so many of his fights, what does he personally mean to you?
Well, Ali became a larger-than-life figure. He was the guy who really came up with all the promotional ideas. He really taught me how to be a promoter. And I was his promoter, but he was really my teacher. And he was the most generous, kind-hearted guy, and had a great impact in my life, My life would not have been the same without having had a relationship with Ali.
Now, transitioning over to Manny Pacquiao, you mentioned last week that he didn't look too good, but there was jet lag issues. I've talked to Freddie. Freddie says he finally sees it. He's there. With you, that must be gold to your ears to see Manny now like primed in fight shape, right?
Yeah, you wonder because he was doing very well over in the Philippines, and then he comes over here, and he doesn't look so great. He looked pretty good hitting the pads, but he didn't look great in sparring. And then now he's turned it around, and he's looking the best that he's looked. So Freddie is really thrilled that Manny is peaking at the right time.
I know you mentioned it earlier, and it kind of caught me off guard because there's been a lot of talk about weight differences in fighters, but you mentioned that maybe Manny and Canelo Alvarez. Are you serious about that?
We're serious about that, but Manny has one obstacle. He's got to beat Timothy Bradley, and he's got to decide that he wants to continue fighting. As far as Canelo is concerned, I think he would accept the challenge, but Canelo also has an obstacle. Amir Khan is not going to lay down. He's not going to go without a fight. I think Canelo wins that fight, but that's not an easy fight.
What would you say about the weight differences? Canelo balloons up past 60, close to 75, 70 the night of a fight.
With Manny the way he is now, with both hands working the way they are now, Canelo is going to take the kind of beating from Manny that Oscar took. Trust me.
You think so? Even with no rehydration and Canelo telling him, you have to fight me at 55, I'm not going any lower.
He's not going to catch him. He's not going to catch him.
So instead of Crawford, you would go right into that Canelo fight if Manny tells you, hey, I feel good, I look good, I have one more fight.
That's a decision for Manny. I don't tell Manny who to fight. I listen to what he wants, and I react accordingly. If he would rather fight Crawford at 140 than fight Canelo at 155, that's a choice for Manny to make. It really is. I don't pick his opponents. He may ask me questions about opponents, about financial aspects, but he picks his own opponents.
If that fight happens, you're going to hear so much about it's a dangerous fight. Canelo's so much bigger. And I know you heard it before with Oscar, but there was a rehydration clause in place with Oscar, but I think even more you might hear it with a potential Canelo fight.
Listen, I've been in this business 50 years. People can attack me, can attack my cards, can say what they want. It's like water off my back. It doesn't bother me. If I didn't think that Manny would beat Canelo, and if Freddie didn't think so, we never would have mentioned that fight.
Speaking of Manny, I know everyone's talking about it, and it's a touchy subject, what he said about the gay community. Have you had one-on-one time with Manny to talk about that issue, and if so, what'd you tell him?
We discussed it. What I told him is personal. I counseled him. You remember, I'm not going to tell him to change his religious belief. That's
He's a grown man.
No, it's not only a grown man. That's his conscience.
Yeah.
But there's a way that he can present it and say it that is not offensive to the gay community, and I don't think it's his place or the place of any person or athlete, a public figure, to insult a community like the gay community. I think it's just wrong. You don't do that. I mean, you can say that I'm a religious person and I'm against same-sex marriage. Fine. That's your religious belief. But don't make analogies that are stupid and hurtful, and don't quote biblical verses taken out of context.
Do you feel after you counseled him that he kind of thought hey, I regret saying these things that I said?
Well, that's for him to say. I think Manny's a very caring person. He is really apologetic that he's hurt anybody. But if you ask him the question up front, are you against same-sex marriage? He would say, yes, he is. That's fine. These analogies trying to justify it, are ridiculous. All he has to say, it's my religious belief, I'm against it, period. All right, Manny's downstairs.
All right, well, Manny's coming up. Thank you for the time, Bob. Really appreciate it. He has to go right now. It happens on April 9th, HBO pay-per-view, Manny Pacquiao against Timothy Bradley. Part 3 of the rubber match. We'll see if this ends up being Manny Pacquiao's last fight. Maybe a fight with Canelo, which, hey, you never know. Boxing's it's a crazy business, isn't it? And if Tim Bradley wins this fight, there's a lot of matchups that open up for him. Make sure to go ahead and watch the rest of the interviews that we have from this press day over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/FightHub. Go ahead and give us a follow at FightHub TV. And go ahead and give me a follow as well at Hey, It's Marcos V. This is Marcos Vegas from the Wild Card in Hollywood reporting for FightHub TV.